Hi everyone. In today's video we are going to talk about these lovely tropical plants called the anthuriums. The botanical name is Anthurium andrianum and I have a few plants here. Two of them are blooming. So you have this dark red bloom here and then you have this pink one blooming as well. Now, an interesting fact about this plant. Although this looks like a flower, this is nothing but a modified leaf. It is called either a bract or a spathe. So you see this leaf, this is called the bract or the spathe, and this one is actually the bloom, or it's called the spadix. You can see it on this plant as well. This lovely little pink spathe with almost yellow spadix that you have right here. Now, these plants have got multiple names. They are called flamingo flowers, the tail flower, the painted tongue plant, etc. Now, there are different varieties. These are almost thousands of varieties or species of anthuriums found, but there are 3 or 4 main varieties, and especially in the flowering variety, you have the andrianum variety, which is the Anthurium andrianum, and then you have another variety which is currently not blooming for me, but it is a variety called Cercerianum. Okay, now the differences in this, if you see the spadix, it is pretty upright and straight, right? Same thing with this. These are the andrianum varieties, but with the Cercerianum, this spadix is kind of curved like a pigtail, and that's why that the plant is also called the pigtail anthurium. These plants are native to the Central Americas and also mostly to the Caribbean region, but now they have been cultivated and domesticated and you can find them all over the world. Okay, especially they grow really well in the tropics. Interestingly, these are also epiphytes, which means that in the wild, especially the varieties like andrianum as well as cercerianum, they are found as epiphytes, or they can also grow terrestrially, but mostly they grow latched on to other plants. That will give you a good tip about their potting mix. The potting mix should be very loose. You can use mix such as an orchid potting mix for anthuriums. Okay, I mostly use grow anthuriums in cocoa peat rich soil, because the soil is well draining. At the same time, it retains the moisture and leaves enough humidity, which this plant loves. As a house plant, the anthurium is extremely durable. So once you kind of get a hang of it, it is a pretty durable plant and it can last for years. And if you give it the right care, it can give you flowers multiple times. I mean, I say flowers very broadly because, as I told you, they are not really flowers, but these beautiful bracts, they can keep coming up multiple times if the plant is happy. There are few conditions when it comes to anthuriums. The first one is light. It does require indirect light, okay, but it also requires some amount of light. This is a balance that you need to play with the anthurium. Now, if you give it very low light and keep it in the shade in your balcony, then what will happen is you will not get as many blooms. But the minute you give it too much of sun, you will have leaves burning. Sunburn is one of the most common problems with an anthurium. So giving it that sweet spot of balance of light, wherein it requires and gets that light that it requires in order to bloom. At the same time, it is not in so much of sun that the leaves burn, is something that you need to work with and move your plant around so that you find its happy spot in your house. That spot could be indoors or in your balcony, as long as it is not in the direct sun. A lot of anthurium varieties are grown only for their foliage as well. Okay, I have some of them. Maybe I'll do a separate video on certain varieties like Anthurium clarinervium. You have the Anthurium crystallinum. Then you have Anthurium veitchii, which is also called the king anthurium. all of these different varieties are mostly grown for their foliage. Vecchia especially, the leaves can grow to like 5 or 6 feet long, and it's beautiful. So similarly, Clarinervium has this black and white kind of leaves. Same thing with the crystallinum, very beautiful heart-shaped leaves that these plants have, and they are not really grown for their flowers. So and then you also have the Anthurium hookeri, which is again grown for its foliage, which looks more like fig leaves rather than anthurium leaves. So beautiful varieties. As I said, there are thousands of species within the anthurium family. So don't assume when you say anthurium, these are the only types of plants there are, right? Mostly the plants that we see are mostly belong to just these two categories, either the andrianum or the scherzerianum. Okay. Now, light requirements is something that I've already spoken to you about. The other requirement is water. Okay. Now, when it comes to water thoroughly, right? Again, think about them being epiphytes. So they like to be watered. They are from the tropics. So there is a lot of rainwater that falls on these plants, but they need to be drained out very quickly. So your soil mix is extremely important. Using well draining soil and using a pot that has very good drainage is most important for anthuriums to grow. The minute you put water into the soil, it should drain out. You should not have any water getting collected anywhere in the pot. Okay, these plants just hate to be overwatered, and that is the number one reason for root rot. Okay, if you have water lying in the plate, or if you have water that doesn't drain well, that's one way that you can kill the plant, because the roots are extremely sensitive. Okay, so water thoroughly when the first couple of inches of the soil becomes dry to the touch, and then stop the watering once it starts draining from the drainage holes. And the more light and warmth that you provide to the plant, you obviously need to water it that much more often. So if it's an indoor plant and it's not drying as much, water only when it is dry. So that's why I'm not going to give you a schedule and say, okay, water it every week, every 10 days. It all depends on your soil mix. It all depends on where you have kept the plant, and how dry is the soil, and how big is your pot, etc. So a whole lot of conditions that decide on watering. Okay. Now, and one thing about this plant, it will tell you. If it is thirsty, it will tell you all the leaves will start drooping and wilting. At the same time, if you're overwatering it, it will tell you as well, wherein the leaves will quickly turn yellow. Okay, so that's a good tip to know that the plant is being overwatered. Now, in terms of temperatures, anthurium likes warm temperatures, given that it is from the tropics. So you will see that the plant does not like winter as much, right? Especially now in Bangalore, it's pretty cold, especially if you're keeping this plant outside in the balcony or on your terrace, etc. Try and get these plants inside, or put them where they are not getting direct, like a blast or a cold blast, etc. Protect these plants, especially in the winter, so that because they don't like very cold temperatures as well, and they will also stop growing. So when they stop growing, don't fertilize or water them as often. And then once you see new growth coming in early summer, that's when you start fertilizing them, as well as watering them more deeply as well. Okay, you're coming to fertilizer, very sensitive to fertilizers, right? With anthuriums, I'm extremely careful how I fertilize them. Normally, I stick to organic fertilizers, whether it's your vermicompost. I would avoid an NPK or slow release, etc. Otherwise, these plants can be extremely sensitive to over fertilization and salt buildup, and you will lose the plant within a day or two. Okay, so the fertilize very rarely, if at all. Otherwise, as long as you're giving it the right soil mix, which is well draining, nutritious soil to begin with, I don't think you need to fertilize it too often. Repotting, you need to repot these plants, especially depending on the kind of media that you're using. Say if you're using coco peat or peat moss or even coconut coir, etc. These will lose nutrition quickly, right? So you need to repot every couple of years so that the plant can grow in good, well-draining, nutritious soil. Humid loving plants, so humidifier obviously will help, but otherwise, as long as the humidity is around 50%, they are pretty good and comfortable. More than humidity, I think temperature is what these plants are quite sensitive to. So especially the cold temperatures and the direct blast from the sun, both. So extreme temperatures is something that you need to protect this plant against. Some of these might require support as they kind of climb up, and you'll also see aerial roots coming out of this plant. Once it's established and happy, you'll also see aerial roots coming out, and you don't really need to cut them. Just leave the roots be, and they will provide that additional support to the plants or also absorb the additional moisture. And as your plant grows, always remember to repot it in a bigger pot, because their roots, they like the roots to be pretty airy. So as they are epiphytes and they grow on other plants and trees, they like their roots to be well aired and not really root bound. This plant doesn't enjoy being root bound. So repotting it often is also an important tip when it comes to anthuriums. And of course, the most important thing, right? I mean, you've seen a lot of these anthurium flowers in cut flower arrangements, etc. So, and they are grown commercially. I think one of the most popular plants to be grown for cut flower propagation as well. So they provide, and these flowers last a long time. I mean, you can, these, I think this one that has been there, it started off with this beautiful dark red color, and this, I think this has been there for the last 6 to 8 weeks now. Okay, so they last for a while, and this still has some life in it, and it's just going to drop off by then. I'm hoping that one more will come out. Okay, so so that's really about anthuriums. So they are grown for their beautiful spades, the bracts that you have, and just for the foliage, the beautiful hard leaf foliage as well. And you have some varieties that are grown only for foliage. As once you get a hang of them, I'm not going to say that these are the easiest plants, not really beginner plants. Okay, so while you will see a lot of articles on the internet saying that anthuriums are very easy, I would say that these are more of intermediate plants for people who have some experience in gardening, because they have a lot of requirements when it comes to that balancing between the light and water requirements, especially the light requirements. And that's something that it takes a little time getting used to, but once they settle, they are the most rewarding plants that you can find. And I hope this particular video helped you understand these beautiful plants a little better. And if you like videos like this, please do subscribe to the channel and do share this video as well with other gardening enthusiasts like you. Thanks so much for watching this video. Thank you so much. Bye.